Hello, this is Pure Cognitions. My name is Anastasia Hunter. Today here with me is Dr. Russ Harris, one of the most influential psychotherapists in the world, even though he's really trying to argue with me on that during our interview. We asked Dr. Harris a lot of interesting questions about acceptance and commitment therapy, how we can support ourselves during our darkest times, how we can make sense of multiple contradictory narratives, and find a way to our real values. Please like and share this video, subscribe to this channel, and we really hope you enjoy it. Hello everyone, and this is Anastasia Hunter, and it's Pure Cognitions. And today with me, I'm super lucky to have our guest, Dr. Russ Harris. And I believe that he's the most influential psychotherapist in the world, and don't even try arguing with me on that. And his work
I wish.
Okay, so his work is centered around acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. And Dr. Harris, could you please tell our listeners or viewers who don't really know what it is, could you just tell us a bit about that?
Well, ACT is short for acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a model of therapy that has two aims. It aims to help reduce psychological suffering and help people build richer, more meaningful lives. And it's called acceptance and commitment therapy because of a key message: accept what's out of your personal control and commit to action that improves your life, which is easy to say, but not so easy to do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harris. And now, could you please tell us a bit about yourself? I'm sure most of our listeners would know you, but just please.
I can, but you have to stop calling me Dr. Harris. Russ is good, please. Yeah, so I was born and bred in Liverpool, England. My grandmother came to England to escape the Russian Revolution. So she actually taught me a few words in Russian. I can still remember "Ma большой дорогой внучек." So there you go.
Perfect. Russ, so have you ever been to Russia yourself?
No, I haven't. I would love to, but obviously it's going to be a long time before that happens. So it, but I mean, it's just tragic seeing what's going on there with Russia and Ukraine. It's kind of the history and politics is so difficult. And one thing that's been interesting for me during all of this turmoil between the two countries is providing a lot of free training for both Russian therapists and Ukrainian therapists who are dealing with very similar issues on both sides of this kind of terrible situation. So I was very pleased to be able to kind of offer some words of well, hopefully useful words in this interview, although when people are in these awful situations, words are often not really very much use at all. So it's an act of faith being here, I guess. I hope that I can say something that might be useful for some people. But the hardest thing about people going through these awful crises, the most important thing, I think, is self-compassion, just acknowledging the pain and suffering and being there in a kind way for yourself. So but I went off topic, didn't I? You asked me about myself. So I grew up in Liverpool, and I went to university as a doctor at the medical school in the north of England, Newcastle upon Tyne. And I graduated as a doctor from there. I then moved to Australia, to Melbourne, Australia, where I've been for the last 30 years. And I was a hospital doctor for a couple of years, and then I was a family doctor, a GP, for a few years. But what happened was I just became more and more interested in the psychological aspects of health and well-being, much more than the kind of physical aspects. And I started to lose interest in writing prescriptions and treating medical conditions, and I started to get much more interested in looking at the psychological side of things, which eventually led me to change careers and become a psychotherapist. And here I am today. Not the world's most influential psychotherapist, but hopefully a little bit influential.
Thank you so much, Russ. It was so interesting to hear that you have so many interesting connections with Russia, so many interesting Russian words to use. Is there anything in Russia that still attracts you, despite of all the mess that we've seen, despite of all the sadness that we've seen in the last couple of years?
Well, I think that, the humanity and the heart of the therapists that are doing this work there is a beautiful thing to see. Obviously, there's, I think the problem, I don't want to get into politics. It scares me even just kind of talking about this topic, because so many people can misinterpret what you say. But obviously, there's lots of people in Russia that don't want the war, that don't like it, that don't approve of it, but are kind of being forced into this horrible state of affairs. And I think the danger for everybody outside of Russia is overgeneralization and kind of saying, well, they shouldn't really be talking about Russia as a country or Russia as a people. They should be talking about the Russian government and Putin. It's a different thing. Yeah, the humanity of and the caring and the compassion that I see amongst Russian therapists helping to deal with the fallout of that is certainly inspiring for me.
Thank you, Russ. So now that we've started talking about Russian people, you might know that in Russia there is still kind of a complicated relationship with psychotherapy. For example, my mom, when I just started practicing and she found out that I'm in therapy myself, she just started crying. So, and Russian men in particular, they like Tony in Sopranos, if you remember when he was hiding that he's in therapy from everyone around because it was kind of even dangerous to admit it. So this is exactly the same thing that I can imagine is kind of reality for Russian elder men today. One of my Russian friends, male friends, also once mentioned that he's not interested in whatever the woke American psychologists tailored for their friends. So, do you think that acceptance and commitment therapy is something that could suit this kind of mentality, considering how many cultural differences we have? Is it like one size fits all?
Well, back in 2015, the World Health Organization asked me to write an ACT protocol for use in refugee camps. And so this is very, very stripped down ACT. There's nothing woke about it. It's just a very practical, living in a refugee camp. Life is pretty hard. And they've done 3 studies of this protocol. The first one was with female South Sudanese refugees in a Ugandan refugee camp, all of whom had depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, who'd experienced multiple traumas, gender violence, all of the atrocities of warfare, and were still living in this refugee camp at the time that they were introduced to ACT. So the study showed pretty conclusively with 600 of these refugees, they were all able to get real benefits from learning ACT. So they had significant reductions in depression and post-traumatic stress disorder from about 10 hours of ACT intervention. And these were cultures that had no concept of therapy, and it wasn't presented as therapy. It was just presented as practical skills to help deal with life when it's stressful, you know. Um, and So the same protocol has been translated into about 30 different languages now, and it works well with people in Turkey and Syria and Uganda and China and Arabic languages and European languages, and it really, when you strip back down to its basics, it's a cross-cultural approach. For sure, the originators of ACT were, from the USA. And if you look at the original ACT textbooks, they're full of, kind of American metaphors and colloquialisms and so forth. But that's ancient history. What people have been able to do is kind of take these basic principles and processes and really just make them accessible, make them easy to use by anyone, anywhere, no matter what stressful situation they're in, and outside of a context of therapy, just as a set of practical tools for life, really.
Thank you so much. Exactly. So this World Health Organization interventions that you made, Russ, is exactly why I'm calling you the most influential psychotherapist in the world. This is so impressive and this is so inspiring. Yeah, so thank you so much for that. And just coming back to our Russian contest. So in the Russian edition of The Happiness Trap, the chapter about values starts with the Dostoevsky quotes, which I want to thank you for. And it sounds so it is neither a person nor a nation can exist without some higher idea. So do you still like this quote, by the way? Like coming back, because I didn't find it in the recent edition. I think there's something else there, right?
I didn't put that in there. The Russian translators put that in there.
No way.
Um, yeah, I had they replaced. I had a quote by Tolstoy, and the Tolstoy quote was the only time that is important is now, because now is the only time we have any power. So the translator obviously didn't like that quote and changed it.
Okay, okay. But right now, when I read it to you, do you think that is still something that we can go from?
Well, I'm not sure I fully understand it, to be honest. Can you tell me what it means?
Okay, maybe then we just skip to another question if this is not something that you actually wrote in your book. Um, as ACT works with values, maybe you can suggest something for those people who find themselves deeply confused and just confused with the narrative that they hear in the Russian propaganda, in the Russian state right now, in the wartime situation, because there's quite a lot of guilt and shame for both our actions and inaction. And let's imagine that I have a value of being brave, of making a change, but at the same time, I have a value of self-care. So what do I do in this kind of conflict? How do I find the way out?
Yeah, so values are not like books in a bookcase. They're like the continents on a globe of the world. And no matter how fast you spin that globe, you can never see all the continents at the same time. There's always some coming to the front and some coming to the back. And so at different times in the day, some values, different places, different situations, some values will come to the front and others will go to the back. If you've got two values that seem to be in conflict with each other, a really good way to deal with that is just to draw a Venn diagram. Draw two overlapping circles, and in one kind of right, if your value is being courageous, and on the other, your value is self-care, and you can find ways where both of those values overlap. You can be courageous while also looking after yourself, taking care of yourself. And then you can find other ways where courage predominates and comes to the front, and others where self-care comes to the front. And then you can find ways to build those into your day. You run into problems if you think it's got to be one or the other. So it's really about what in this moment, in this situation, which value is going to be most useful for me and my loved ones in terms of what I'm trying to achieve here. But you can certainly, any two values, there will be opportunities to live them both together. You can be both courageous and self-caring at the same time.
Thank you. So, Russ, now that we started talking about values, I know that you say that values are like ice cream and you're free to choose whatever you like. No one can judge you for choosing your values. So, what if some of the values that my government, my state translates to me and says that they're worth dying and even killing for, like fighting for, what if it sounds like aligned with my values? And what if I find myself deeply confused and can't understand what to believe in?
I think it's very important to distinguish values from rules. So values can usually be said in one or two words, like loving or being loving, or kind or kindness or being kind, or fairness or being fair, or honesty or being honest. If you can't say it in one or two words, you're not talking about a value. Then, so a value is just a desired quality of behavior. It's the qualities I want to bring to my behavior now and in the next moment and the next and the next. It's the qualities I want to bring to my words and my actions. It's how I want to treat myself and others, how I want to treat the world around me. Rules are kind of instructions about how to live your values. What's the right way? What's the wrong way? Rules often contain words like should, have to, must, ought, do it this way, don't do it that way. For example, in the Bible, thou shalt not kill. Well, that's a commandment. That's a religious commandment. That's not a value. The value underneath that is loving or being loving. So when governments or organizations or workplaces or armies are laying down rules and telling you you have to do this and you have to do that and do right, those aren't values, those are rules. And then the difficult decision that you may find yourself in is, if I follow these rules that are being imposed on me by other people, will I be able to still live my values while following those rules? And sometimes you won't, and that can be a very difficult situation. But it's a very important distinction. Certainly, as we use the term enact, a value is just a quality that I want to bring to my behavior. So no one else can impose values on you. They can tell you what their values are, and they can tell you that you need to follow these rules based on their values. But your values are always your own. It's like, this is what I want to be about. Yeah, just like if I say to you, hazelnut ice cream is the best flavor. Anastasia, what's your best flavor of ice cream?
It's pistachio. So, yeah.
Pistachio. And I can't make you, have hazelnut as your favorite flavor, right? I can force you, maybe, maybe if I deprive you of all ice cream and the only flavor you can ever have is hazelnut, then maybe you'll eat it, but that still won't make it your favorite flavor.
Yeah, I've lived in Italy for a bit, so this is where they really try to make you like some particular classic Italian flavor. They say favorite Snickers flavor or your favorite, some kind of something very fancy that we can see like in American kinds of shop. This is not something you should go with. You should just go
Yeah,
almond or pistachio, which I ended up
yeah.
to love. Yeah. But thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's really interesting. So, coming back to the situation in Russia, I know a lot of people who just found themselves being completely unable to feel safe anymore. they just feel like they can't make any long-term goals. They are just completely disappointed in this idea of delayed gratification. They don't want to make savings. They don't want to have kids. And do you think that ACT has something to offer to these people?
I think ACT does have something to offer. I mean, first of all, it would, from an ACT perspective, that's completely normal, understandable reaction when you're in such difficult circumstances with so much uncertainty. It's completely normal to have that kind of fear and anxiety and insecurity and have all of those doubts about trying to lay down any foundations or plan for the future. Completely understandable. And, I guess from an ACT perspective, it's really about, well, if we come back to the refugee camp protocol, one of the things that we introduced very early on there was what I call the challenge formula. As basically there's three options for any challenging situation, no matter what it is. So one option is to leave. Now, that's not always an option. You can't just leave a refugee camp. You can't just leave a war zone. You're often stuck there. You can't just leave prison, but very often leaving is an option. So, it's not passive acceptance therapy. It's not saying just passively accept what's going on in your life. Seriously consider leaving as an option. If you can leave, and if leaving seems like the best option, then leave. But if you can't leave or it's too dangerous to leave, then you're down to two options. So option two is to stay and live by your values and take action to make things as good as they possibly can be. Make room for the pain that's inevitable and treat yourself kindly. So in other words, if you're in this situation, you can't leave, well, take action, do whatever you can, no matter how small those actions may be, do whatever you can to make things even a little bit better. Live your values, don't give up on your values, be the person you want to be. And of course, there's going to be lots of painful thoughts and feelings and emotions showing up. You can't expect to feel happy. So learn how to make room for that inevitable pain and treat yourself kindly. This self-compassion, this being there for yourself in a kind and caring, supportive way, it is so fundamental to surviving. So, ACT can actually give you the practical skills to do all of that. The third option, which unfortunately is an option that comes quite naturally to most of us in really challenging situations, the third option is to stay and do things that either don't help or make things even worse. And of course, there's no shortage of those, ranging from drugs and alcohol to, picking fights with the people that you love and so forth. Unfortunately, very often that's what we do in really challenging situations. Um, so And the reason we do that is because we just get hooked by our thoughts and feelings. Our thoughts and feelings, they kind of hook us, they jerk us around. And so we have very little control over our actions. And when we get jerked around by those difficult thoughts and feelings, we tend to act in ways that are ineffective, that make the situation worse, not better. So what ACT can do is teach you unhooking skills. It can teach you how to unhook from those difficult thoughts and feelings and emotions so that you've got more choice over your actions. And then when you've got more choice over your actions, you can make better choices guided by your values that are going to help you adapt better to the situation and look after yourself and your loved ones better than when you're just being jerked all over the place by your thoughts and feelings. So in those ways, I think ACT can be very practical, as we've seen in there's three published studies now on this refugee camp protocol, and I think everything in it is very relevant for countries that are at war. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Russ. Thank you. And so, do you think that For Russian people who actually went to war and feel like they're traumatized right now coming back, or for people who lost someone at war, do you think that acceptance and commitment therapy would be suitable? And what can a person expect from ACT if they don't have like anything else to expect from life?
Well, I think what they can expect from ACT is some good practical skills to help them deal with their pain. You know, you can't just magically get rid of those painful memories, those awful memories. If you're seeing people that you care about injured or killed, or if you've witnessed the atrocities of war, there's no um, there's no scientific approach that can just delete those memories from your brain. There's no delete button in the brain, but what you can learn is practical skills so that when those awful memories show up, you can take the power out of them. You can take the impact out of them instead of them kind of dominating your awareness like this. You can learn how to sort of put them down so that you can engage in life even with these memories present, even with these painful emotions present. So if you think about it, when people are experiencing trauma of any sort, if we imagine that this sheet of paper is all your difficult thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, all the difficult stuff that's showing up as a result of that trauma. And if you imagine that over there is everything that's important in life, the people you love, your friends, your family, the things that you want to do with your life, the tasks you have to do to live effectively, the things that you enjoy doing, music and movies or sport or anything that you're reading, whatever it is. So all the stuff that's important in life, the pleasant important stuff and the painful important stuff, the problems you have to face up to, the challenges you have to tackle. And what this piece of paper represents is all the difficult thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories that are showing up as a result of trauma and these horrible wartime experiences. So people have two default ways of responding to this stuff. One way is this: they just get completely, kind of caught up in all these thoughts and feelings. They're completely dominated and overwhelmed. While I'm all caught up in them, my life just disappears. I'm just lost in my thoughts and feelings, and everything else is just gone. The other way that people respond to this stuff is they do whatever they possibly can to try to push it away. The kind of drugs, alcohol, avoiding in people, places, situations, isolating themselves, dropping out of life, anything that will help get a bit of short-term relief from these thoughts and feelings. And it's kind of like, if this is what you're doing, it's very hard to focus on what's important. If over there is the person that I love, or the movie I want to watch, or the task I want to do well, it's very hard for me to focus on that while I'm busy doing this. It's also taking a lot of effort and energy. It's distracting. It's very hard for me to act effectively while I'm busy doing this. It's hard for me to drive a car or cuddle a baby or cook dinner. So both of these ways of responding, this and this, are not very helpful. Both of them come naturally. We all do it, but both of them actually interfere with living a rich and meaningful life. But what ACT teaches us to do is, instead of doing this and instead of doing this, it teaches us to do this. We learn how to kind of drop the struggle with these thoughts, feelings, emotions, how to let them sit there. When I do that, then it enables me to focus on my life, to focus on the tasks that I want to do, to be present with my loved ones, to engage in the books or movies or music that I want to enjoy. Much easier for me to take action now. I can drive a car, type on a computer, cuddle a baby. And these things haven't disappeared. They're still here, but I've now got a whole new way of responding to them. They're no longer kind of pulling me out of my life or eating up all my energy and my attention. And so I can now actually kind of put my energy and my attention into doing things that are going to help me build a better life. So this is what ACT can really help us to do. And obviously this requires learning some skills. No one will be able to do that from listening to this interview. Um, or if people do read books about ACT, any book you read on it will say, reading this book's not enough. You've actually got to practice the skills. Practice, practice, practice.
Thank you very much. In fact, I think that this intervention would still be very helpful for many people who just got introduced to this idea for the first time, that you can actually just put it down and still be able to have something valuable in your life. So thank you very much, Russ. Another question is, what if someone that I love turned out to have really strong opinions on war that I don't share? And we had like an amazing relationship, and then it turned out that I'm married to Hitler, or that my parents are Nazis or something, and then I feel completely miserable because of this and don't know what to do. So is there anything that ACT could offer me in this case?
Well, so I mean, again, the first thing that is self-compassion. Just acknowledge that this is hard, it's painful. It's when the people that we love have got opinions and beliefs that are difficult for us, then that triggers all sorts of painful feelings, Um, and so, being there in a kind and caring way for yourself, just acknowledging how difficult it is. And then where you go from there depends on what you want for the relationship. Is this a relationship that you want to nurture and build into a strong relationship? Then it may be the best thing to do is avoid those topics of conversation. You probably find with most people in your life, there are certain topics of conversation that you learn not to have. um, it may be about something awful like views on war, but it may be religious, it may be politics, it may even be, what football team is the best football team, so you know you don't have to talk about every possible topic with people in your life. It's okay to avoid certain topics. One thing that it's useful to keep in mind is that if someone's got very deeply entrenched viewpoint about something, it is highly unlikely that you are going to be able to change that. You are wasting your time. If I tried to convince you, Anastasia, that pistachio ice cream is rubbish,
No.
and what's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie, I really like Kieslowski's movies. I like the three films that he made.
Right. Okay. So, I love Mad Max. If I started trying to tell you that, Mad Max was better than Three Colors Blue, would I get anywhere?
Um, no.
And so it's like, if you stop to reflect on your own life, the stronger your opinions and beliefs are, the less likely it is that anyone's going to change them. So trying to do that with people is probably just going to create fights and arguments and so forth. Um, if you do want to change someone else's, or at least influence their perspective, uh, then the most effective way to do that is to be really open and curious and understanding, and take the time to really understand why they believe what they believe, where those beliefs have come from, really, really explore it with genuine openness and curiosity. And that's a very hard thing to do when someone shares beliefs that are very different to yours. So, but unless you're prepared to do that, you've got no chance at all. If you really want to do that, that's your starting point. Understand their perspective, why they believe that, where that comes from. Don't start trying to challenge it at all until you fully understand how they see the world and why they see it that way. And then maybe you can start introducing other ideas. But again, there may be a lot of the time the practical thing is just to avoid that conversation if you want a healthy relationship with these people.
Thank you very much, Russ. I think that would be really useful for quite a lot of Russian people. And so I think quite a lot of our viewers and listeners just really got into this idea of ACT after you introduced it in such a beautiful way. So, for those people who really liked it but don't really know where to start this journey on the this ACT journey, do you think there's some small committed action that we could suggest for those people who want to give ACT a chance?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the easiest thing would be to have a read through the book that I wrote for the World Health Organization. It's a cartoon book called what is it called? I can send you the link anyway, and it's a very simple cartoon book that illustrates ACT, and it's if they read that and it's got some audio recordings with it and it's got some little exercises in it, and that would be a really useful way to start, I think. Yeah, especially because it's free.
Yes, we have it in Russian. It has some amazing metaphors, and then we will attach the link to this interview for both Russian and English version. And I think my suggestion of a committed action would be to suggest your book, your another book, The Happiness Trap, that was once life-changing for me. And could you please tell us just a bit about it?
Yeah, sure. What's it called in Russian?
Ловушка счастья. The happy
Labushka,
Ловушка счастья.
Labushka Sheshta. And and what does that translate as? Is it the
Uh,
happiness trap?
yes, ловушка means a trap. Счастье
Uh,
means of happiness.
okay. Yes, well, that was yeah, that was my first book on ACT, and I guess it gets its title because popular ideas about happiness will make you miserable if you believe them. So very often we fall into the trap of trying to cultivate or hold on to happiness when it's completely unrealistic to do so. Happiness is an emotion that comes and goes like all other emotions. And I often use the analogy that emotions are like the weather, they change from moment to moment. And so, obviously, when you're in really challenging, stressful situations, it's unrealistic to feel happy. But where ACT is one of the strengths of ACT is that even in really challenging, difficult, stressful situations, you can still live by your values, even if you are not feeling happy. And living by your values will give a sense of meaning and purpose. So when you live by your values, there's a sense of being true to yourself, doing what's in your heart, behaving more like the person that you want to be. So it can give you a sense of empowerment, I guess, that, even in the midst of these difficult situations, I still have got some choices about what I do and what I put into the world and how I treat myself and others. And it's paradoxical stuff as we let go of trying to control our emotions and control our feelings. And instead, we put more and more effort into controlling our actions, living by our values, saying and doing the things that are meaningful to us, and engaging fully in what we're doing, giving our full attention to the activity that we're in and really immersing ourselves in what we're doing and just allowing our feelings to change like the weather without trying to control them. Well, there's this great paradox that actually what happens is, and there's thousands of published studies to confirm this, is that actually we do end up feeling better and happier a lot of the time. But if we set out to try to feel happy and control that feeling of happiness, we often end up actually defeating the purpose and feeling miserable. If you really start clinging to happiness, then when you do feel happy, it's like, how long is this going to last? How long before it disappears? So there's this constant anxiety even when happiness is present. It's like, what if it goes? And then when happiness does disappear, because like all emotions, it comes and goes, it's like, where did my happiness go? How am I going to get it back? How am I going to get it back? Whereas if it's like, okay, can I just live a meaningful life? Can I just do the things that matter and just let my feelings change like the weather? It's interesting. There will be times where happiness arises by itself, and you can appreciate that and enjoy that. But you don't want to cling to it.
Thank you so much, Russ. That was such an amazing, such a beautiful interview. Just want to thank you again on behalf of Pure Cognitions, on behalf of all of our Russian colleagues, the ACT colleagues. Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure to meet you today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I hope, gosh, I mean, I hope there's all of this awful situation comes to an end. And in the meantime, I think it's great that there are, therapists out there that are doing good work to help people. And, I hope that ACT can play some role in helping folks deal with the awful times that they're living through.
Thank you very much. Okay, then thank you and goodbye. It was really